Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Given our faith, I think you'll find today's topic particularly interesting. We're going to be talking about Georges Lemaître, a pretty fascinating guy who balanced the world of science with the world of faith.
Yeah, it's a story that kind of really pushes back on this idea that science and religion just, can't get along. Lemaitre's life is a great example of how you can be both a devout Catholic and a groundbreaking scientist, and,
Yeah,
and how those two things can, even make each other stronger.
I totally agree. And we've got some really cool stuff to look at today. An article from CatholicCulture.org, Lemaitre's Wikipedia page, and even some pieces from Catholic.de and the American Museum of Natural History. Oh, and PhysicsOffTheUniverse.com, of course, for all that juicy science stuff.
Yeah, that's a great mix. It'll let us really dig into not just his scientific achievements, but also how his faith, played into his work.
So have you ever heard that a Catholic priest is considered the father of the Big Bang Theory?
It does tend to surprise people.
I bet it does.
So let's start with Lemaitre's early life. Born in Belgium, late 1800s, he was interested in both science and religion, even as a kid, kind of like had a dual passion, you could say.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Back then, those two fields were seen as, well, completely separate. Sometimes even like they were enemies.
Yeah, totally.
But Lemaitre, he was all in on both.
Exactly. He even went for both priesthood and a scientific career. That must have raised some eyebrows.
I can imagine. And, defying expectations seems to be like a running theme in his life. World War I breaks out. He volunteers for the Belgian army, right? Artillery officer, earns the Belgian War Cross for his bravery.
And get this, he even pointed out math errors in the artillery manuals.
Oh, wow. Not exactly the way to make friends with the higher-ups, is it?
Not really, no. But, it shows you his independent streak, like committed to getting things right, which, of course, that would come in handy later when he started challenging scientific ideas.
Right. So after the war, back to those passions. Doctorate in mathematics, then off to Cambridge to study with Arthur Eddington. Huge name in astrophysics.
Oh, yeah, Eddington. He was like the top guy in the field. And, being mentored by him, that was huge for Lemaire.
Absolutely. And, Eddington introduced him to Einstein's theory of general relativity, which, as we'll see, played a big role in his later discoveries.
It sure did.
Every step he took, it was prepping him for what was next. Research at MIT, and then boom, 1923, ordained as a priest. It's almost like, was there anything this guy couldn't do?
It's pretty remarkable. Talk about dedication, brilliance and moving between these totally different worlds. And then in 1927, things got really interesting.
Right. This is where it gets exciting. Lemaitre uses Einstein's theory of general relativity and comes up with this radical idea. He proposes that the universe isn't static, it's expanding.
And hold on, he did this 2 years before Edwin Hubble. Hubble usually gets all the credit. It's only recently that people are starting to recognize that Lemaitre should be given his due. They're even talking about renaming Hubble's law to the Hubble-Lemaitre law.
That's a win for truth, and, well, it shows how humble Lemaitre was.
Yeah.
But he didn't stop there. He then suggests something even more radical. He proposes that the universe started from a single point, what he called the primeval atom.
And that, my friend, is what we now know as the Big Bang Theory. Although, funny enough, the term Big Bang, that was coined by Fred Hoyle, and he actually hated the theory.
Oh, wow.
A little bit of irony there. But anyway, name aside, Lemaitre's idea completely revolutionized how we understand the universe's beginnings.
It's pretty mind-blowing. A Catholic priest using Einstein's equations to figure all this out. What do you think? Was there something specific about Einstein's theory that sparked this whole idea for Lemaitre?
That's a great question. To get that, we need to go a little deeper into how Lemaitre was thinking and what the scientific world was like back then. You see, back then, most scientists thought the universe was static, like it was always there and it never changed. But Lemaitre, he's looking at these equations, Einstein's equations, and the math, it's telling him something different. It's saying, hey, this universe, it's in motion. It has a history.
So what did other scientists think about this whole expanding universe idea?
Well, at first, a lot of them were skeptical. Even Albert Einstein, the guy who came up with relativity, he wasn't buying it. There's this famous story where Einstein tells Lemaitre, your calculations are correct, but your physics is abominable.
Oh, man, I can only imagine what it must have been like
Yeah.
to hear that from Einstein himself.
Right. But Lemaitre, he was convinced. He believed in the power of observation, and he really saw the elegance in the math. He knew the data supported his theory, so he kept refining it, kept defending it. And guess what? Eventually, even Einstein changed his mind.
Wow, so Lemaitre actually convinced Einstein.
He did. Einstein ended up praising Lemaitre's work, called his explanation of the universe beautiful. It just shows you Lemaitre was brilliant, and it shows the power of science, you know? Even the biggest, most established theories, they can be challenged and changed when there's new evidence and good arguments.
It's credible. And all this while being a priest. How did he do it? How did he make sense of being a scientist and a devout Catholic?
Well, Lemaitre was very clear that science and religion, they were separate things. He saw them as like parallel ways of understanding the world, each one offering its own unique insights, but not meant to like interfere with each other.
So he wasn't trying to use science to prove his religious beliefs, or the other way around.
Exactly. He believed that mixing them up like that actually hurt both science and religion. He even had this great analogy. He said, should a priest reject relativity because it contains no authoritative exposition on the doctrine of the Trinity? Once you realize that the Bible does not purport to be a textbook of science, the old controversy between religion and science vanishes.
That's a really powerful point. It shows that science and faith have different roles, right?
Yeah.
In how we understand the world.
Exactly. The Bible, he saw it as offering spiritual truths, moral truths. While science, that's about explaining the natural world through observation and experiments. For Lemaitre, there was no conflict.
But I'm guessing not everyone agreed with him. Did he get any pushback? From scientists or from the church?
Oh yeah, there were definitely some tensions. Some scientists thought his primeval Adam idea was just a way to sneak religion into science. And on the flip side, you had some religious figures trying to use the Big Bang to prove creation, which Lemaitre, he wasn't comfortable with that at all.
Yeah, wasn't there something about Pope Pius XII giving a speech in 1951 where he seemed to endorse the Big Bang as proof of creation?
That's right. And Lemaitre, even though he was a devout Catholic, it really bothered him. He even met with some Vatican officials and basically said, hey, maybe don't make statements about cosmology. He really felt it was important to keep those two things separate, science and religious doctrine.
He was a man of principle, huh? Not afraid to stand up for what he believed, even when it meant going against the grain.
Definitely. For him, his scientific work, it had to be judged on its own merits, not on any religious implications.
That's really powerful, especially, for those of us who value both faith, A and D reason. It shows that you can be deeply religious and still embrace the search for scientific truth.
Absolutely. Lemaitre's life is like a blueprint for how faith and science can not only coexist, but actually complement each other. His faith didn't hold back his scientific work. It might have even inspired it.
So if he wasn't trying to prove the Bible with science, how do you think his faith influenced his work?
Well, you got to remember, for Lemaitre, the universe was this incredible, awe-inspiring creation, a reflection of God's power and wisdom.
So maybe his faith fueled his curiosity, gave him a sense of wonder, a purpose in his search.
Exactly. It probably gave his scientific curiosity a framework, a deeper sense of meaning behind his drive to understand the cosmos.
Fascinating. These two parts of his life, science and faith, they were really woven together, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. Lemaitre's story reminds us that we're complex. We don't have to fit into neat little boxes or choose one side or the other.
He really lived a full life, didn't he? Embracing both the scientific A and D, the spiritual.
He did. And, beyond the Big Bang, he did a lot of other important work in science. This guy was a true polymath, talented in so many areas.
Oh, that's right. He worked on cosmic rays, too. That was pretty groundbreaking stuff, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He teamed up with a physicist named Manuel Sandoval Velarda, and together they proved that cosmic rays, those super high-energy particles that hit Earth from space, they're actually electrically charged.
Now, for someone who's not a scientist, why is that a big deal?
Well, before their work, people weren't even sure what cosmic rays were. So proving they were charged particles, that helped solve a lot of mysteries about these, really fascinating things.
It's amazing how his curiosity led him to make all these important discoveries.
And then there's his work on the three-body problem. That's a really tough problem in celestial mechanics, Scientists have been trying to crack it for centuries. It's all about figuring out how three objects in space, like planets or stars, how they move under their own gravity.
So like predicting how they'll dance around each other.
Exactly. And Lemaitre, he came up with a new way to approach the problem, showed off his incredible math skills, and gave us some valuable insights into how things move in space.
Sounds complicated.
It is. And get this, Lemaitre was also ahead of his time with computers. He saw how they could revolutionize science, and he even worked on some early programming stuff.
So he was like a computer science pioneer, too.
Pretty much. He even worked on a kind of early version of the basic programming language. It's clear this guy was a visionary, always pushing the boundaries of what we know, embracing new tools and methods.
It's hard to believe one person could accomplish so much.
No.
What do you think drove him? Where did he get all that passion for knowledge?
I think it was a combination of things. He had an incredible mind, obviously, a deep faith that made him want to explore God's creation, and this unshakable commitment to truth, no matter where it led him.
It's really amazing, isn't it? His story. It brings together science, faith, the search for truth. It's like he was constantly pushing us, pushing us to understand more, both about the universe and about how science and religion fit together.
Yeah, and his legacy. It's still making us think about these big questions, these really big questions.
We've talked about the Big Bang, his views on science and faith, his work on cosmic rays, the three-body problem. But, how does all that affect us now, decades after he's gone?
Well, one way is, it keeps the conversation going about science and religion. Lemaître's life, it's a great example of how those two things, those two worlds, they can actually work together. He showed us you can be a believer and a serious scientist without having to compromise who you are.
He really flipped that whole idea on its head, didn't he? That science and religion are always fighting.
Totally. He showed it's not about picking sides. It's not about faith versus reason. It's about realizing both science and religion have something important to say. And they can actually help each other as we try to find truth and meaning.
I really like that analogy he used. Science and religion being like parallel ways of looking at the world. It's like we don't have to cram them together into one big explanation.
Yeah, exactly. Appreciate what each one brings to the table. They work in different ways, right?
Yeah.
Science, it explains the natural world, observations, experiments, and religion, it deals with those big questions of meaning, purpose, morality.
Like you're looking at a tapestry, but from different angles, each view shows you something different, something important about the whole thing.
That's a great way to put it. Lemaître's life, it encourages us to look at things that way, to see how complex the world is.
But it's more than just accepting that science and religion can, get along. Lemaître's story also makes us think about some really deep philosophical stuff, like what is the universe really, and what's our place in it?
Definitely. If the universe had a beginning, like the Big Bang suggests, well, what does that mean for us? Why are we here? What's it all about? These are questions people have been asking forever, but Lemaître's work, it gives them a whole new weight.
And it's not just about the past, right? It's about the future, too.
Mm-hmm.
If the universe is expanding, what happens next?
Mm-hmm.
Does it go on forever? Or does it collapse? And what about us? What role do we play in all of this?
Those are the questions astrophysicists are still trying to answer. Lemaître, he changed how we think about the universe. And it goes beyond just science. It touches on, those big existential questions we all have.
He expanded our minds in more ways than one, didn't he? Not just about the physical universe, but about the possibilities, the wonder of it all.
He did. And he did it all so humbly, always acknowledging that we don't know everything, that there's still mystery out there.
That's what I find so inspiring about him. He never lost sight of the big picture. He was a scientist, sure, but also a philosopher, a theologian, a deeply spiritual person.
And, we live in a world that wants answers, quick fixes. Lemaître, he reminds us that it's okay to embrace the mystery, to accept that some questions, they might not have easy answers.
He teaches us to be okay with not knowing everything, to keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep searching for truths no matter where it takes us.
And for those of us who are Catholic, his life shows us that faith and reason, they can work together. He was devoted to his beliefs, and he was committed to scientific discovery. And those two things, they made each other stronger.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Lemaître's life, I just feel really grateful for everything he gave us, for science, for our understanding of the universe, for that conversation between faith and reason.
He was a true pioneer. Brilliant mind, unwavering faith, incredibly humble. His legacy, it encourages us all to keep exploring creation, to seek truth, and to never lose that sense of wonder.
And for you listening, I think there are a few big takeaways here. First, we don't have to keep our knowledge in separate boxes. Faith and reason, science and spirituality, they can be partners. Second, exploring the universe, it's about more than just scientific discoveries. It's about understanding who we are, why we're here.
Well said. And lastly, Lemaître shows us that humility and a sense of wonder, those are the keys to this whole journey of discovery. There's so much we don't know, and that's exciting. It keeps us curious. It keeps us asking questions. It keeps us searching for that deeper understanding of ourselves, our world, and the universe we live in.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the life of Georges Lemaître. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking those questions, and keep seeking that truth wherever it may lead.